the rhythm and the sway. Cannot wait to be embraced. This diverse, alive, inverse city, where trees grow around the cement, our new self in concrete, our feet against concrete as we go about our ways. Percussion, play, echoes, echo, 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 echoing, learning to love what we have made. Softening between brick and cement, a built-up world. Steeples and stairs, glass mirrors, sparring for social change. For social change. Can you spare a little social change, please? New voices roasted and wrapped in ice. My mother walked from the airplane into a fridge. That is Toronto in winter. The best of times, she says, and the coldest of times. Incubating a world of creativity and visionary relativities. Ideas swirl, cultural voices unfurl, making us larger than we are becoming. That poetry, hip-hop, opera, visual smarts, community arts. Toronto in excelsis. You Toronto are my water bottle, my arts.
So good morning, good morning, good morning all. It is November the 29th, top of the day to you. And you were listening to the sound of the great Juno Award winner, Lillian Allen, with Toronto Poetic Gesture. Oh, and she's going to be with us today. But I want to extend a very warm welcome to all of you within the sound of my voice. Welcome to the Black Food Sovereignty Toronto Community Conversations. My name is Aita Sadu, and it is a privilege to be here again in this forum because, as you know, Black Food Sovereignty Toronto is a movement. It's action. It's a journey. We're on a road. And so on behalf of the Black Food Sovereignty Toronto Community Conversations, I welcome you and I greet you. I greet you first with this lovely yellow pepper. Because we are going to be shining our lights so bright today, and that light is just going to fuse together and we are going to shine even brighter. They say you are what you eat. So I know that you love those peppers coming at you. And then somebody say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. That is even pomsite in Trinidad language. And of course, I am greeting you with all these wonderful things because we talking food. So I needed to model food and demonstrate food. And again, if you don't know what you're tuning into, you are tuning into the Black Food Sovereignty Toronto Community Conversations. And green, I'm bringing you a little green in this cucumber because green is the color to go. And as I said before, the Black Food Sovereignty Toronto is a movement. And for those of you who are feeling a little hot because it's such a beautiful day, look the weather that the Black Food Sovereignty Network ordered up for everybody in Toronto, maybe across Canada. And also, too, you can share with me some melon and we can have lunch together. We could even eat that when we do the network speed dialing. But to just get us started today, I'm going to give a shout out to some people who are here joining us. I'm going to shout out Jasmine Ratliff, the co-executive director of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance in New Orleans. Oh, all the way in New Orleans. Big Toronto, welcome to you. Of course, our girl, Floydine Friedel Charles, executive director of CAFCAN, always to part of leadership and creating movements all over the city. To Chef Bashir, a brother that needs no introduction. He's a renowned chef and educator at George Brown and a huge pillar of Black food sovereignty in Toronto. Mustafa Kak, director at the Center for Studies in Food Security at Toronto Metropolitan University. Good morning to you. I hope you and your family too are doing well. And Kimberly Nesbitt from the Anti-Racism Policy Advisor and founder of Elevate Policy, also to a warm welcome to you. Other shout out to Charlene Ford for Melanated Vegan. Big shout out to you. And I think that you've got some goodies coming up later. And to Sarah Edge, Associate Professor and Associate Director at the Center for Studies in Food Security at Toronto Metropolitan University. Ooh, another shout out to you. And to Ama Diego, Executive Director at Sea Change, and apologies if I'm massacring up your last name, but a lot of love in my heart for you. So to all those people, I just want to give a big shout out. And of course, to every single one of you who I did not mention by name, you know we're coming with love to you this morning. And today's conversation, we're going to be discussing all kinds of things. We're going to be discussing how we are prioritizing and making a priority a sustainable food system here in the city of Toronto for Black children, families, chefs, Black owners, nutritionists, activists, and more. We want to talk about the community today and how we can hold the city accountable for the Black Food Sovereignty Plan recommendations and actions that they have proposed. And we also want to hear about the update on the 5-year plan. We welcome you today to listen, to reflect, to add your voice, to ask questions, to offer up solutions, because when we come to speak about food or gather around food, the possibilities are endless as we engage. And included in this exciting day too, we also have presentations from Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit. Again, I said we are going to be graced with the presence of Lillian Allen. She's going to be here in real time, dropping some words and poetry on us. And you will also get the chance to do a speed networking. There's also a space within the forum where you get to connect with each other, exchange emails, promise to follow up. And I know that you will follow up. And you also get to win prizes from a delicious Black vegan food shop. Ooh, I know you're thinking this is the place to be today. So first of all, we're now going to have the land acknowledgement, and we're also going to have the libations. And to perform those two tasks for us are two incredible stalwarts in our community, people who are dedicated to social justice, to elevating and uplifting our community, and people who always on their lips, they talk about well-being, wellness, and health. First person up, and that is Sheldamar Elliott. And Sheldamar will be performing the land acknowledgement today. And after Sheldamar, we're going to have the mighty sister Aina-Nia Ayodele, who will bring to us the libations. But let me tell you a little bit about Sheldamar. Sheldamar comes with years of experience in food justice work and a background in community support roles. Sheldamar brings an anti-oppressive and community-centered lens into all of the work he is involved in. He is passionate about food justice work that tackles issues around food insecurity and achieving food sovereignty for marginalized communities. His interests are on how Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities are able to acquire access to land, and the necessary resources needed to achieve food sovereignty and create community-led alternatives within our current food system. So that is Sheldamar Elliott for you. And then to the sister, Aina-Nia Ayodele. Aina-Nia Ayodele is a leadership coach, author, and ancient wisdom teacher who considered herself a spiritual liberation activist. This CEO and principal of Anan-Nia Learning Journey, Inc. is unapologetically on a mission to influence institutions and individuals to create bold and meaningful change through a decolonization approach to leadership as it means to equity. She established North America's first government-sanctioned strategy and permanent office as a systemic address to anti-Black racism. Please put our hands together and welcome Shaldamar Elliott and Aina-Nia Ayodele to perform both the land acknowledgement and the libations.
Greetings, everybody. Thank you for having me here. So we wish to acknowledge the land that African Food Basket operates on in Toronto, and it's our responsibility to, through the work that we do, to steward it well. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and the peoples of Mississaugas of the New Credits. Toronto is also home for people of African descent. These communities are reflections of current generations and past, and represent the ancestral history of those brought to the city and country involuntarily as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Today, this meeting place is still home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples from across Turtle Island, and the proud people of Africa and its vast diaspora. As First Nations and people of African descent continue to show solidarity in the pursuit of equity and justice, we acknowledge the many intersectional experiences of our shared communities within Toronto, and we honor their legacies through our work and remain grateful for the opportunity to work on this land. Thank you.
Greetings, and thank you so much for having me here today. This is this is a phenomenal moment. My heart is filled with and overjoyed. You know, as someone who teach that we can manifest anything we envision, this is an evidence of envisioning and manifestation. But before I go any further, and I'll say a few words after the libation, but I want to join in the consciousness of our brother that came before me in the land acknowledgement, and also acknowledge the ancestors of African descent. As a descendant, it is so important for me to continue to encourage all of us to never ever forget, to go back and fetch, to ensure that we are always calling on our ancestors, that we break down and disrupt these colonized structures and go back to our ways of being. Understanding that pouring of libation is not the only invocation right across the region of Africa, as each region has their own practice. But in my practice as a Yoruba priest, it is libation that we pour as we call the ancestors in. So I want to invite you to, right where you are, to take a nice deep breath with me, so we get centered and present as we invite spirit into our midst to lead this experience today. What a beautiful day. We give thanks to the Creator, first of all. We give thanks to the sovereign being. We give thanks to the elements of the earth. We give thanks to the four directions. We identify the four directions today, and we invite our ancestors and the spirit guides and elements of the earth that is keeping us alive and well and beautiful today. We call in the spirits of the north, our spirits of the west, of the east, and of the south. We calling our ancestors. Ancestors, you know you're already here. We know that you're just dancing and you're happy and you're singing right now. I want to, in particular, call in and acknowledge the 12.5 million Africans, our ancestors who were stolen from their lands, who were ripped out of their homes, whose language was taken from them, practices were taken from them, their entire way of being taken from them, but they remained, their spirits remained. And so they carried with them so many of our ways of being that helped them to survive through what I have come to know, 1,000 years of enslavement, of the slave trade. And so, ancestors, I pour libation for you today, and I acknowledge your presence with us. I acknowledge the presence of so many of our ancestors who never made it across through the transatlantic slave trade for many reasons. I pour libation for your sacrifices. I pour libation for the 383,000, only an estimate, that were displanted and settled not by choice on this land. I pour libation for you. I pour libation for our recent ancestors, many food justice activists and advocates who looked forward to this day that we have right now, who are no longer with us. I don't know your names, but I know that because I mentioned your nature, that you are going to be with us. Thank you for coming. I invite you right where you are to call the names of your ancestors. Call them, bring them out into your spirit, because the work we have to do requires that we stay connected to spirit. This is spirit work. This is not a physical work. So let's call them in so they can help us, because we need their help. We say, ancestors, drink and quench your thirst. We know that when we call one of you, we call you all. So we say, Ashe, 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 Ashe. We raise our hands in celebration because we know you're here. Stay with us, ancestors. Stay with us. Stay with us for this entire day. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, you've heard me talk about food, the Black food sovereignty strategy, or anything to do with how this whole thing came to be. You've probably heard the story I'm about to tell you. I tell the story often because I think it is important that we talk about how things come to be. It is important that we never forget our history, that 20 years from now, we remember how this came to be. First of all, this came to be through the power of Black people in Toronto and the greater Toronto and right across Canada. This did not come to be while some people signed off and approved it, called Toronto Council. This came about because of Black people. And so I still remember the day when Anan came and sat in my office, and we dreamed about this, and we talked about this, and we talked about Black food sovereignty and sustainable food systems for Black people, because we know that this was so important. And I remember Alan saying to me, this is activism. When we are able to have sovereignty over our food, that's activism. And we had probably a 3-hour conversation. And so, as you know, we're here. There is a 5-year strategy, and I'm so excited, so proud, so pleased, and so encouraged of the work that has already gone into this. There is just so much. There is just so much. And so what I want to say, though, is I want us to dream. I want us to vision what this will look like, what exactly we want this to be. From when we talk about policy is about people. Sometimes we forget that. Policy is about people. So when policy is written, how does it impact the people? How will we see that? How will we know that? And you community, you Black sovereign people, you Black food sovereignty people, all of us here, what do we want this to look like? So let's dream. You know, one of the things that happened for us in enslavement and the legacy of enslavement is that the narrative, the colonial narratives, continue to affect us. and it affected our food. And these colonial narrative continue to be written in policy and programs and practices, and impacted our lives as Black people. And that's what we're trying to disrupt. So we want to move anyone and anything from a place of avoidance and maybe even repulsion. Beyond tolerance, we are disrupting tolerance. We are disrupting tolerance. And we're moving to a place of acceptance, and we're seeing it. This action plan, this strategy, this 5-year strategy is the beginning of what we intend to see. It's just the beginning. And government must take responsibility for this. And so we must keep the pressure on. Don't get complacent, people. Don't ever get complacent, because we must get to this place of Black food safety. And that for me is this place of appreciation, where those who say that they're governing us, where we who are governing in our leadership get to that place of appreciation, of appreciating each other, of appreciating what we bring, of appreciating our resources, of appreciating our abilities, of appreciating all that we are as Black people, as appreciating us pre-colonialism, pre-transatlantic slave trade, pre-all enslavement, who we are, this appreciation for who we are, and refusing the white gaze and stepping into ourselves. My prayer for us all is to get to that level of appreciation. And even if we fall back down, let's get back up there real quickly, because that place of appreciation is where safety lies. It's where sovereignty lies. That place where we stay close to spirit, close to the ancestors, and close to our way of being. That's the key. And so that's all I've been asked to share with you today. And just to thank you for the work that you're doing. I said to Celeste before we came on how much I appreciate the work that she's doing. And I know there's so many people behind the scenes like Celeste. And I know the work that Anan is doing. Please continue to cover them, love upon them. If and when they make a misstep, don't throw them out. Don't throw out CABR for the work that they're doing behind the scenes. Don't throw out the people that are doing so much behind the scene. When they make a misstep, just love upon them, speak kindly to them, and share with them what you think they need to do. But full love. I want to just leave you all with that. Thanks for the work you're doing. I love you all so very much. The ancestors are dancing. They're very pleased. Peace and blessings to you.
Oh, good people. It would be so important for you to know what I'm saying if you could hear what I'm saying, because the mute thing, it was like I was on mute and having my own like little mini rehearsal, thanking Aina-Nia. But Aina-Nia, I wanted to say I thank you and I greet you with the plant of aloe vera. Wow, my gosh, technology can make you kind of crazy still, but also to the thank you for reminding us that this is not a session for us to be complacent. This is not not a moment for us in history to be complacent, but this is a moment of action in doing. And the most important thing that you reminded us of is that we are a people who know recycling. We've been doing recycling even before it was in vogue. And so we will recycle ideas. We will not waste or discard anyone or any possible potential that there is, but we will work with all voices, all ideas, all roads that lead us to how we can best work in Black food sovereignty. So thank you, my mighty sister. And thank you for that kind of look like, oh my God, Ida's talking, but we have no idea what she is saying. So moving along with the Black food sovereignty Toronto community conversations, we are now going next to Anan Lololi. What can I say about Anan Lololi that you don't already know? He is the founder, one of the principals behind the food sovereignty, Black food sovereignty Toronto. He has been a food justice advocate as long as I have been alive, and you know I'm 50 and I look good for that. But in seriousness, I always think fondly of him as a musician, and in that movement, he also spoke to social justice. I remember fondly too of the African food basket and the innovation of that, and on Saturdays, how excited we would get to receive fresh produce. And this man and his family and all the people associated with him have never, ever, ever rest. They are really determined that this Black food sovereignty movement will take place here in Toronto, and that we will build a mighty nation in this Black food sovereignty. So let's bring on Brother Anan Lololi to speak and give some remarks.
Yes, give thanks. This technology is giving us a little bit of trouble. I give thanks for being here. Give thanks to the Almighty to give me the opportunity to be here, to look back at our experience, where this come from. And I would like to see the presentation if it's available. 1 minute. Okay, yes. Where we come from. We come from a long experience. When we talk about food sovereignty is nothing new to people of African descent. But this particular experience started in 1995 when we started the African Food Basket as a community food buying club, so we could make food more affordable for people of African descent, people from Caribbean, and people from Latin America. So the reason for this Black food sovereignty conversation, it's easy to see that the state of Black food insecurity in Canada, that we need to make sure that we take responsibility of our food security. Because with high food insecurity rates, it has been linked to poor health outcomes, including increased likelihood of developing chronic disease such as diabetes, asthma, cardiovascular disease, and depression. And the people of African descent are most affected by food insecurity in Canada. As you could see in this picture, 12.4% of white children live in food insecure households, but 36.6% of Black children live in food insecure households. That is more than a third of Black children live in food insecure households. What is food insecurity? Food insecurity is a child waking up in the morning with no breakfast, going to school, and also in the evening, going to bed without dinner. That is food insecurity. And if we have a third of our population, our future, being developed in this way is a problem. So we got to take charge. That's why we're talking about food sovereignty. And in households, black households are more than 3.5 times more likely to be food insecure than white households. So we need to first step forward and take charge. And as my good sister Aina-Nia, Ayodele said, it was on the June 29, 2019, that myself and the new executive director of the African Foods Basket, Zakaya Tafarai, visited Aina-Nia, and it was good conversation because we wanted to make sure that we could contribute to the recommendations of Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit to make sure that we participate in this whole process of looking at anti-racism, Black anti-racism. A way of looking at racism, but defined by Dr. Core Benjamin, a Ryerson social worker professor, policies and practice rooted in Canadian institutions such as education, healthcare, and justice that mirror and reinforce beliefs, prejudice, stereotyping, and discrimination towards people of African descent. It is rooted in a unique history and experience of enslavement and colonization. So we want to make sure that the roadmap and the context of the actions that are necessary, that food play a part in this important work of the Toronto Action Plan to confront the anti-Black racism unit. So quickly, we develop a partnership, as my sister said so clearly, Aina-Nia, and we started to do what we need to do in the community. First, we had some community conversations in the east and the west end of the city to make sure we rally the troops within our community who are involved in sustainable food systems work. We were in North York and we were in Scarborough, and we were just about to go downtown. Then what happened? COVID-19. We had to make sure we sit down with our partners at Toronto Metropolitan University, CAFCAN, NAPSI, and also Confronting Anti-Black Racism to really restart how we would do in this age of COVID-19. So first thing we did, we make sure we could continue the conversation. So we had a conference on November the 27th and the 28th, 2020. Then we had a round table on Black food sovereignty in May the 1st, 2021. And then the important event that happened, the City Council of Toronto approved Canada's first Black food sovereignty plan. And the plan was to respond to the needs for immediate and comprehensive action to address the problem of food insecurity experienced by many Black Torontonians. And here we are. This is the first year of the Black food sovereignty plan, and we're having a conversation to make sure that we could work in partnership with the city and the Black community to move this agenda forward. This agenda, it's 5 recommendations and 45 action items. There's lots of information in this Black food sovereignty plan. We want to make sure we go through it, and the community, as Ita said, hold the city accountable for these recommendations. We don't want to have a saying, promises is a comfort to a fool. We don't want our community, the Black community, the African Canadian community, to be fools. We want to make sure we work in partnership with the city so we could move our agenda forward, so we could become a more food secure community, and we could become a more food sovereign community. So the Black food sovereignty plan is a community-led Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit plan to address chronic food insecurity, anti-Black racism, and structural inequity in Toronto's local food system to create immediate and long-term change to improve the health, well-being, and capacity of Black Torontonians. 5 pillars: sustainable funding and community capacity building, access to growing space, accessible infrastructure, Black food hubs and cultural markets, and culturally rooted community health and nutrition programs. This is a quote from the indigenous community when they're talking about food insecurity, food sovereignty. It said, "Land is our identity and holds for us all the answers we need to be healthy, vibrant, and a thriving community. In our old traditions, our creation story, we are taught that the land that provides the food and medicine we need are a part of who we are. Without the elk, salmon, huckleberry, shellfish, and cedar trees, we are nobody. This is our medicine, remembering who we are and the land that we come from. We traditionally come from the motherland of Africa. We're here in Canada. Generations have grown up here. We have to forge an alliance with the indigenous community to make sure that we could know what this land provides for us. What are the medicines and what are the what the land would give us. So the partnership has already been started last year when we invited our deal system, Don Morrison, to come to our community and speak of indigenous food sovereignty, and we continue with that partnership. What is sovereignty? A Black Food Sovereignty Alliance, our Black Food Sovereignty is not an association or not an institution. It's the power of a people to make decisions for themselves without interference from others. When we talk about Black food sovereignty, it's the work of people of African descent in Canada. So, like our good honorable prophet, he says, we're going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, because whilst others might free the body, none but ourselves can free our mind. And as Aina-Nia was saying, this is work that we need to do for self. Black food sovereignty, what it is. Food sovereignty is the right of people of African descent to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agricultural system. My brothers and my sisters, food sovereignty was a way of life of people of African descent before colonization by Europeans. Africans had their right to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods. This is nothing new to people of African descent, like Sankofa. We go back and we fetch this tradition. Thank you, and let us have a well and productive day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brother Anan, for your words in always reminding us how powerful too we are. And what I respect about this journey, Brother Anan, is with government or without government, this movement continues to make progress. So we know that holding government accountable, that is possible, because with or without government, all of us who are on this call or have witnessed this movement of Black food sovereignty, we know that you are on a journey of self-determination, and this has been proven time and time again. So there is no handouts. There is no, lifting us up. We are elevating ourselves. And as Aina-Nia says, we are moving into spaces that we were there before, but now we're reclaiming those seats to sit in again. So to be clear, this movement is truly about self-determination. It will happen with or without whatever. There will be no interferences or interruptions within this movement as we move forward. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And now we're going to move to another set of our presenters. And I hope that if you're in the comfort of your home, and we want to thank you for allowing us into your homes, because when you do that, I always say this, you are welcoming us into your hearts. So you could put in the chat too, something you're eating, something you're nibbling on, something that you are looking forward to make today, something to share with us. We are looking forward to see even any recipes that you're going to put in the chat today, something to just make us feel good. Our next presenters are members of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit. And anyone who is associated with that unit, let's just give them applause, because their work is heavy lifting. Their work is mighty, and they work on behalf of so many of us, so many of our aspirations, so many of our challenges. So I hope that where you are out there in Zoom land, you are clapping these people, because the work that they do requires heavy lifting. And if we have many hands helping with that lifting, the work is going to be so much lighter. I want to welcome today Dr. Akwatu Khenti. And again, Dr. Akwatu Khenti is no stranger to us. He is steeped in Afrocentricity. He has always been that advocate in justice out there on behalf of the Black community. And today he's coming to us in the capacity of Director of Community Resources section of CABR. And joining him is Meseret, Asneke, and she's also too a mighty member of the community, and she's a community development officer with CABR. And along with them is also Michelle Molubi, another mighty warrior too on this journey. So let's put our hands together and welcome the members of Confronting Anti-Black Racism Network, and joining them too will be also members of the Black Advisory Food Circle. So let's move over to Akwatu and the team of Confronting Anti-Black Racism to lead us in a discussion.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon, Aita. That's a wonderful introduction. Really empowering. And so I'm going to be talking for about 15 minutes, and one of my colleagues is going to show some slides to back me up while I talk. And I actually have a long version and a short version, and I see that we're running a little bit behind. So I'm going to give you the short version because there's some overlap with what my brother just presented, and even with some of the things that Aina-Nia said. So this work is a privilege indeed. And I'll be providing you with an update. But, I start by grounding the work in some brilliant words of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, one of the greatest resources for self-reliance, self-responsibility. I mean, there's nobody else in the world who stands at his level. And, he said something very profound, which I'll start with. He said, we make ourselves what we want to be. We make ourselves what we want to be. And this movement and this effort is critically important. And that vision, which actually was articulated by Garvey as well as Booker T. Washington and many others, is important to remember as we move forward. Next. So the land acknowledgement is a baby step. Go back one. I just want to make one point. When I do the land acknowledgement, I always remember that colonization is alive and well. And it's alive and well and affecting us all. And whenever you hear anybody talk about the rule of law or rules-based order, you must always ask, whose rules? It's not indigenous rules, although we're living on indigenous land. And until we see indigenous rules, then we know there's no equilibrium has not been reattained. Next. Of course, I have to acknowledge the sacrifices and struggles of the ancestors who are responsible for me being here, having this wonderful job as the Director of Community Resources section in Social Development, Finance, and Admin at the City of Toronto. I never assume it's because I'm so talented, it's because I got it all, I'm so creative. Absolutely not. Ancestors paved the way. And in food security, it's important to remember that in the 19th century, when we were running from outright slavery, and when we arrived in Canada, the first thing we thought about was food security. And I want to call the names of two ancestors, Josiah Henson, who arrived here in 1841, helped to create the Dawn Settlement. And the first thing they did was, try and put together the money to buy a farm, 200 acres in Dresden, where farming was sort of the prerequisite for freedom. You weren't free until you could feed yourselves. And then in 1849, Abraham Shadd. A lot of people know about Mary Ann Shadd, but they don't know about the father, Abraham Shadd, who arrived here in 1849 in Buxton, set up a public school, but also set up what we could call a credit union. And the aim of the credit union was to loan money to Black farmers so that they could buy tools and get started on farms, because they couldn't get money from the mainstream society. The only people they could get it from was their own. And Abraham Shadd in 1849 led the way. And so I called both Abraham Shad and Josiah Henson, who led the way in the 19th century on food security, and it's a struggle that continues. Because when we experienced emancipation in 1834, the social determinants of health became the lever to keep us in our place. And until we can achieve actually food security, which brings with it health security and other forms of security, housing security, we'll never be free. That's my position. Next. Many people touch on this all the time, the disparities which made us more vulnerable to COVID. And there's many disparities. There's where we work, and 20% of us, our women especially, work in the health field, which brings them right into contact with COVID. But it's not just where we work, it's how we work. We have 2 and 3 jobs, so we're working in 2 and 3 different institutions, so you get a compounded exposures. We also experienced the most unemployment during COVID. I think of COVID as a synergistic pandemic, a syndemic. That's a new word, syndemic. So it's a word in anthropology. And a syndemic is the infectious disease comes along, and because those social determinants of health like income, unemployment, housing work against you, you are more vulnerable to the infectious disease. And that's what happened. But then, because of the infectious disease, the social determinants are worsened. And that's exactly what happened. Our income fell, we lost more jobs, lost more housing, homelessness grew, food insecurity grew for everyone, but white families have more savings and wealth to draw upon than Black families. And so Black families not only drew down the little savings and wealth, they borrowed money to survive during the pandemic, putting them in debt. So that for Black people and Black communities across this country, recovery means a different thing than it does for other communities. And we need to be aware of that, because we got climate change coming, food insecurity, other housing insecurity made worse by COVID, unemployment insecurities. We didn't even have the 10 days we needed of vacation to sort of get through. So those equity issues persist and need to be addressed, because they translate into greater severity of illness, greater death rates. We had twice the death rates, and I should say we have twice the death rates from COVID because of all these disparities. 32 per 100,000 versus 16 per 100,000 for whites. So this is a life and death matters. It's not just how much you eat, when you eat. It's actually how long your life is, what your life expectancy you can expect to be. Next. So addressing food insecurity, of course, has been touched upon, and the partnership between CABR and Anan was commented on by Aina-Nia. It's led to the development of a plan rooted in Black food sovereignty with 5 key areas of focus: access to healthy cultural foods, access to parks, growing spaces, anti-Black racism in the health sector, access to infrastructure, targeted funding. These are 5 key issues, sort of underpinnings of Black food insecurity, which were identified as the key areas to address. Next. What's very important is that our leaders, community leaders, took a systemic approach. And you've seen this in many quarters. The 5 pillars of the plan, these are transformative. They aim high, because you're trying to change a system. What's important about this is, when will we know when we achieve these goals? This is a long-term plan. So it's not just about the goals, actually. It's about how we get there. We have to really think about this journey that has already been started and how we are traveling to that destination of equity, racial equity, self-reliance, self-responsibility that we want. How we get there is very important. But the goal is systemic change, nothing more, nothing less. Transformation of the Black experience, so that all people of African descent can fulfill their right to be who they are born to be. Next. And there's a strategy, and Each year, city and community develop a work plan, and this year, and year 1 and year 2, addresses these key features. Building infrastructure, there's 25 actions, but number 1 and number 2 is key. Number 1 and number 2 is the one we're addressing right now. Prioritizing funding access, supporting the advisory committee, setting up foundational support for advice from the community and leadership from the community. Next. Navigating city processes and systems is the focus of action 7. Action 13 addresses Black arts and culture, food, fund, providing key funds are targeted, funds for the community, targeted. Next. And these are detailed actions. A current anti-Black racism review of urban agriculture and city garden policies is underway. Next. Action 21, again, I'm not going to drive down into the details because you're not going to remember, but it's the overarching themes that are critical. And Action 21 is very important to me because it recognizes the links between green spaces and mental health. And during COVID, we experienced significant mental health setbacks. And it has to be said that when we went into COVID, we weren't as bad off as we think we were. Because when we were doing these town halls, the Black Scientist Task Force on Vaccine Equity did pre and post tests. And one of the things we found out that prior to COVID, many Black people felt good about life, felt good about themselves, felt good about their possibilities. But as the pandemic progressed, we saw an erosion of that perception, an erosion of that optimism, and more cynicism and pessimism. And it was confirmed by a study at the University of Ottawa when they found that across this country, depression has grown significantly during COVID, especially with Black women who are employed, Black women who are employed, because microaggressions in the workplace is such a barrier, such a boundary, such a burden that it drives mental health burdens and mental health problems for us. And we recognize that coming through this pandemic, and we are prioritizing it so that when we recover economically, we'll be also mentally well. We'll be also clear that we also need to be mentally well, which means we need to be ourselves. Next. Workforce development is important. Workforce development is important. And it's always been important. When Booker T. Washington set up the Tuskegee Institute, they had 33 occupational training programs for agriculture, 33. And by the way, they had student farms for Tuskegee. The students fed the school, they fed the faculty, they fed each other, they fed the guests. It was these student farms that were pivotal, and food security was key to the vision of Booker T. Washington, which actually attracted Marcus Garvey and brought him to the US because he came wanting to meet Booker T. Washington so that he could actually build on the vision of Booker T. Washington. And you couldn't get more centered on food sovereignty than that. Next. Area 4 is the development of food hubs, food markets. That work is long-term, that work is key. And, there are 3 key areas. And I won't drill down, but if the question comes up, I'll answer it. But nevertheless, we have these itemized approaches, action plans that we're undertaking, but that I should say the role of the city is really to generate the data so that we can know how well we're doing and adjust plans accordingly as we go. Next. Food hubs and cultural markets are so important, not just for the obvious nutritional reasons, but they're important as a foundation for positive community life, for what's it called social capital. And with that enhanced social capital, not only will Black communities benefit, but the city will benefit. And this is a point that has been recognized from the very beginning of the Black experience in the Western Hemisphere. And W.E.B. Du Bois speaks of it, Garvey spoke of it. And Garvey's son, Julius Garvey, Dr. Julius Garvey, speaks of it. And Dr. Garvey in the Caribbean is driving food sovereignty through what he calls the breadfruit revolution. He's hoping to make breadfruit a mainstay and a replacement for potatoes and other high gluten diets that we have, because breadfruit has no gluten. And so food sovereignty is a priority for the Caribbean, it's a priority for sub-Saharan Africa, and it's a priority for us. It's something that links the diaspora with our homelands. And the city is supporting that effort, which is almost miraculous. We're working to increase the number of Black farmer markets. We're working to strengthen infrastructure for farmers to store their food. We have targeted Black emergency food programs, and we're operating funds and providing operating funds to Black-led food agencies to support and sustain, and actually to create a sustainable effort. Next. We've been inspired by the Afro-Caribbean food farmers markets. And again, Aina-Nia touched on some of the visioning that was done and the vision and the work that started and the program that was created. And I want to reiterate that. Thank you so much, Lori. I don't know if she's in the audience, but the city's efforts have been inspired by her. Next. The city supports the work through 4 mechanisms or pathways: an interdivisional staff table, partnerships, the advisory circle, and most importantly, the funding. But I think what we might want to add up there or think about is the data. Data is key, not just data upon the efficiency of what we are doing, but data with respect to the quality of life in the communities that we serve, so that we can demonstrate that these investments generate multiple rewards, multiple returns, multiple sources of social capital. Next. So there's plans for this year, next year, 2023. Coming up is a listening tour with the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Council, or Advisory Circle, and CABR is developing its plan next year. The work is all about shifting the power. And Aina-Nia touched on this, the need for advocacy. But I just want to quote one of our incredible urban farmers, or urban farmer leaders, let me call it that, 67-year-old Karen Washington from the Bronx, who was just retired and moved to the South, but she was in the Bronx leading the food security and food sovereignty efforts for decades. And her quote, this statement, which I took from an interview with her, says it all and is applicable to the diasporic experiences from Brazil right up to Canada. She said, and I quote, "The food system is not broken, nor does it need to be fixed. It's a caste system." That's CASTE, just because of my pronunciation. Let me say that again. It's a caste system doing exactly what it's meant to be. We know most of the power is in the hands of white men, while the majority of farmers globally are women and people of color. We know that bad quality food goes into communities of color, and the healthy food goes into affluent white communities. So I'm not going to go into every word she said, but she said, and I quote, "The food system has to change, and that change comes with shifting the power." Shifting the power. I think that's critically important, shifting the power. That speaks to the ongoing need for advocacy. It speaks to the determination not to take no for an answer where this issue is concerned, because climate change is coming. You're going to have heat waves, which is going to make food more expensive, more out of reach for many people, even for many middle-income people. So you can expect the absolute necessity to scale up this work. You hear that term, scale up? That means we have to be everywhere, reaching every nook and cranny of the many Black communities that we have. Next. So I want to say a big thank you. Martin Luther King was also concerned about food insecurity during his tenure as one of our great leaders. He said there's no deficit in human resources. The deficit is in human will. And I can say the same thing about all levels of leadership. It's a question of will. And we have to have the will to ensure that we don't take no for an answer. This thing has to be done because it's critical to our health and our survival. Thank you very much. You're muted.
Thank you, Brother Akwatu, for that inspiring presentation. I sat here and I had many thoughts, and thank you for pointing out the role of women in the whole farming sector, food sector. And when we talk about market economics, we definitely have to talk about the role of Black women in the market.
And actually, you reminded me, there's one Black woman I also wanted to quote in closing, Fannie Lou Hamer. The first time I heard the name was in a Malcolm X speech.
That's right.
Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yes.
But Fannie Lou Hamer set up in 1969 something called Freedom Farms. Freedom Farms. And she set it up because thousands of Black people, Black sharecroppers, Black workers on white farms were being kicked off the farms because they were registering to vote. And so she built this 680-acre farm with multiple sort of streams, like to produce the foods, can the foods, sell the foods, retail the foods, have restaurants and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But the powerful quote, which is relevant to the days of slavery, to emancipation, and to now, and it's also very relevant to the diaspora and to Haiti. She says, with a pig and a garden, nobody tells me what to do. With a pig and a garden, nobody tells me what to do. And I went to Haiti, the whole that quote ring bells. People, when they hear that quote, people ring bells because that's something they live. A quote in a garden, that is my freedom.
There's your freedom. No, thank you. Thank you for giving us the Sankofa moments as we look back, as we move forward. You've made me think too of all of those wonderful Black women that I walk past their homes every day on my way to school when I lived in the great nation of Barbados. And they would say, make sure you get some fish head soup because that's going to give you bigger brains. Here is an orange. Oh, come little girl, here's a little pomsite or apple or whatever. And that was their scholarships that they gave us on their way to school. And they talk food all the time and how that food would be associated with our bodies to make us the genius that we are. So thank you for reminding me about that. Also, thank you. I got very excited about priority number 21 because that spoke to the excitement of engaging young people into this conversation. And the whole time that you spoke, maybe because you come from the land of Trinidad and Tobago, I kept hearing shifting the power. And so today, because we are creative people and we use the arts and culture to disseminate information, I couldn't help but think of sweet lyrics like shifting the power. And then I thought, oh my God, what a road march it would be if breadfruit was gluten-free. Oh my gosh, we would go over the moon and the top with that as we bring all the assets and elements together in our great culture to speak on Black food sovereignty Toronto. And is someone else joining you, a member of your team? I know that we are now going to go to Q&A piece. I also, too, want to do better justice to this and to speak about the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle. And at all levels in this Black food sovereignty journey, there is accountability, there are roles and spaces for all elements to bring their expertise together. As part of the Toronto Black Food Sovereignty Plan and its community co-leadership governance model, the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle was created to realize the full implementation of the plan. The Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle consists of a diversity of Black professionals with distinct experiences and social identities from across the food system, ranging from chefs, farmers, caterers, business owners, food justice advocates, emergency food workers, and food writers and artisans. So I really wanted to do justice to this advisory circle of people who bring their knowledge and their indigenous skills to the conversation. And so I think we're going to continue now with Meseret, and welcome to your presentation. And to Michelle, also very warm welcome to you today.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Elder Aita. And thank you to Elder Anan and Dr. Akwatu for that overview and really important context of how this plan came to be. So salam, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Meseret, and I'm a Community Development Officer at the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit. And I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Michelle Molubi, who is a Community Development Worker at CABR, also known as the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit. We are thrilled and honored to share space with you all today at the second annual Black Food Sovereignty Community Conversation Conference. And I think we're just gonna get our presentation on the screen. Thank you. So as you've heard today, we are part of the City of Toronto's CABR unit, and we oversee the implementation of the Black Food Sovereignty Plan. And today we're here to share more information about the governance and accountability structure. And we've been sort of naming that, and you've heard that named a few times already today. What does accountability look like for the Black Food Sovereignty Plan? And so we're here to talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. So you may be wondering, and Sister Aita did a really beautiful overview of what the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle is, but you may be wondering, what exactly is that? How do I get connected, and what is their role? So a central component to the development of the Black Food Sovereignty Framework was a community-informed analysis and governance model to ensure that we are effectively implementing the plan from that community lens. To achieve this, the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle was developed to establish a Black community leadership table with expertise across food systems that would not only guide the implementation of the plan, but also support with the development of indicators, tracking, and reporting out to community to ensure that this plan was embedded in community. Now, I want to share a little bit more about the mandate of the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle. So number one, measure and track outcomes. So as community members, the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle provide expert advice and guidance to the city to not only monitor, but evaluate and assess the impact of the plan on the ground, because we want to ensure that it's being implemented effectively. Number two, identify and advise. So as members of community and as experts, the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle also supports in issue identification, including challenges, gaps, and opportunities for us to strengthen planning, reporting, and overall implementation. So what we mean by this is, we have members in this circle who are community ambassadors, and we want to rely on them to let us know what's happening in the community. Is the plan effectively addressing those challenges, but also empowering and supporting those successes that are coming out of community? Number three, engage and update. So in order to identify and advise on this plan, the BFSAC, also known as the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle, will also facilitate transparent, accountable, and responsive updates and communications and engagement with Black communities and key stakeholders. So keeping that conversation going and making sure that they're utilizing their networks to keep us informed and keep folks informed on what's happening with the plan. Number four, raise awareness. As the BFSAC, we will be looking to them to advise our unit on areas where the city should be taking a lead to effectively advance positive outcomes for Torontonians of African descent through this plan. And number five, a really critical component is amplify impact. And this is turning to the BFSAC as an opportunity to support us with partnership development with Black communities. You heard a little bit about a couple of the partners, of course, African Food Basket as an anchor partner, but also expanding our partnerships, being able to support the Afro-Caribbean Farmers Market, as you saw, of course, Lori Beezer, who you all know, who is the creator, founder of that market. So being able to help us develop new partnerships with community leaders, organizations, and institutions is a critical component of the BFSAC. And through this and their expert advice and networks, we can then effectively increase opportunities for collaboration with Torontonians of African descent across food systems for this plan and beyond. I'll now hand it over to my colleague, Michelle, to talk a little bit more about the structure of the BFSAC.
Thank you, Meseret. We wanted the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle to really represent the diverse Black leaders within our food system. So the BFSAC is made up of 10 Black leaders across food systems. This includes, but is not limited to, farmers, folks with expertise in food markets, academics, food business and restaurant owners, and many more. To honor and continue to cultivate existing and long-standing leadership within the sector, at least one member seat is reserved for a member of the Black Food Sovereignty Initiative Toronto Group. The circle also includes 2 representatives who bring a global Black food sovereignty perspective to strengthen Toronto's presence and connection to the international food sovereignty movement. The application and selection process was based on some key steps. First, we organized a public call for applications for the BFSAC and hosted an information session to advise prospective members of the role, what would the role entail. Second, the CABR evaluation team reviewed applications based on some key criteria and representation from key stakeholder groups across food systems. The key criteria included that applicants should, 1, demonstrate strong understanding of anti-Black racism in connection to food security, 2, provide strong examples of how they can play a positive role on the BFS and align with the values, principles, and practices within the BFS plan. 3, demonstrate unique skills and expertise that would benefit the BFS plan. 4, demonstrate an understanding of how to build partnerships within government or community settings. And 5, they must have experience leading or participating in change on behalf of the Black community. These applications were reviewed by our Partnership and Accountability Circle as external reviewers. And for those who may not know, the Partnership and Accountability Circle is comprised of 12 Torontonians of African descent who support and advise the CABR unit on the full implementation of the Toronto Action Plan to confront anti-Black racism. And alongside the Partnership and Accountability Circle, CABR conducted interviews and provided our final scores to deliberate on a final selection that also accounted for representation from priority groups. And this includes youth, elders, members of the 2S LGBT community, and diverse areas of expertise. We are thrilled to introduce you to the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle. There are 10 members, including 8 local members you see here, and 2 international members. But please note, we are still finalizing the administrative onboarding for international members, and we'll be sharing that update as soon as the process is complete. I will now welcome our local members who are present to introduce themselves.
Greetings, greetings. Can everyone hear me? Greetings. My name is Peachtree. I know so many people in the room, and I'm excited to meet quite a few more. I am one of the Black Food Sovereignty Initiative Advisory Circle members. I'm happy to be here. As I've been listening, I've been bottling honey. I'm a farmer. I'm a beekeeper. I'm a seed saver. So I got some good honey, some liquid gold available. That's what I've been doing as I've been listening and thinking to myself, you know, the question I asked when I came in for the interview was, how will the city be the front of Black food sovereignty? And that is how I came into this space. And I will continue to ask this question, but now to the community. How can you see me supporting Black food sovereignty work? What are the things that you want elevated in the space? I'm everywhere and anywhere across the city and beyond. So my name is Petrie Bakoa again. I run the National Black Farmers Fund and Resource Network. You can find me on any social media outlets. It's a pleasure to be here. Give thanks.
Thanks, Petrie. Greetings. My name is Philman George. Pleasure to be here. Both of my parents are from Barbuda, sister island to Antigua, and we have a rich and important legacy of communal land ownership. You are no stranger to Barbudans in this space, as Lori Beezer, who I'm proud to be a direct cousin of, is also a Barbudan. Both of my parents came here before I was born. I grew up in two communities, Horton Park and Regent Park. And upon graduating high school, I attended George Brown College and to study to be a chef. I've been a chef for the last 20 years now. And for the last 10 years, I've been on the manufacturing side of the business. So a corporate chef for Highliner Foods, which is a big seafood company in Canada. There are very few chefs of my color that get to that position. So I want to leverage all of my connections and to help with the sovereignty plan, especially when it comes to tapping into the resources of those big corporations who have social governance mandated within their structures. How do we leverage that? Not only the finances, but the infrastructure, the corporate infrastructure to help us achieve our goals, especially if we're looking at preserving some of our produce so that we can use it throughout the year with agro-processing. So just some of the things that I'm thinking about and some of the skills that I bring to the circle. But I'm really interested in going into the breakout rooms, learning more about this program and how I can connect the dots with some of these organizations that I have connections to.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bernice Yanful. I'm so excited to be on the advisory circle. I'm currently a PhD candidate at the Dalawana School of Public Health, part of the University of Toronto. And my research focuses on the connections between school food programs, food security, and food sovereignty, with the particular focus on Ghana. My family is of Guinean descent. I'm actually headed there soon, so I'm so excited in a few days. Everything about the plan excites me, and I'm just so excited to work with everyone to move it forward. Having a focus on public health, particularly how we can look at promoting culturally rooted community health and nutrition programs is something that's of strong interest to me. So thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to chatting with everyone further.
Awesome. Greetings, everyone. Salamat. My name is Arsema Berhane. In my personal and professional life, I am a connector. I enjoy bringing people together to build from strength to strength. Professionally, I work to support the vision and mandate of Toronto Community Housing, Food Share Toronto, African Food Basket, and various Eritrean organizations in Toronto. And as a member of the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle, I hope to contribute to the provision of access to growing space, access to accessible infrastructure. And I'm really excited to support the collaboration of Black communities, Black-owned businesses, Black farmers, and various Black leaders here in Toronto. So today is an amazing day for us to celebrate, the progress to get to where we are and to really vision and continue to move the work forward. So it's an honor and a privilege to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, and welcome to all of you. And I'm very excited looking at you because I feel as though I have the North, the South, the East, and the West, and the whole diaspora all looking at me at the same time. I know some of you, and I know you're mighty in your efforts. And for those who I don't know, I can just feel it across the Zoom platform, all the goodness, because that's when we talk about food. I hate to say security and insecurity with food. It sounds like I'm cursing, but I'm just so happy to see all of you here today. And now I want to introduce Cecile Peterkin of the Black Food Sovereignty Working Group. She is a coach and career strategist, and a big supporter of the Black food sovereignty in the city as a member of partnership and accountability. So over to you, Cecile.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to all the, I know we're behind time, so I won't be long. I want to say thank you to all the speakers. This has really cemented what the work we're doing with Black food insecurity. And I'm really and truly excited about this conference because there's just so much work for us to do, but I know we can do it because we are very dedicated and change needs to happen. So I have some questions from the Black Food Sovereignty Working Group. And these are just questions as to how we're going to do measurements, how do we move forward, and the things that need to get done. So my first question to the group is, what is the CABR strategy for ensuring the plan's success and long-term sustainability? Anyone can answer that one.
Okay, if I could jump in, I guess. Well, Michelle, you answer that one.
Thank you, Dr. Akwatu. I mean, I would love for you to add on to this as much as you can, but one of our biggest priority really is co-design and collaboration with community. We want to focus on transparent processes informed by the advisory circle, which are the representatives from the community, and facilitate community engagement and pulse checks so that we can remain responsive and ensure that this plan benefits, the benefits of this plan really reach the community and reach all sectors of the community, including sectors that we are not yet connected to.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Akwatu, you wanted to jump in as well?
Yeah. For me, the perfect role or the perfect partnership is one where the community leadership is definitive and clear and explicit so that we can support that leadership. We can't define that leadership or articulate that leadership. That can only be done by the community. And our job is to translate that and help it to happen. Whatever the vision is, help to concretize it through the work that we do with the city.
Good answer, but do you know what your vision looks like as yet, or do you have an idea what that might be?
Well, we want to create a Black funding framework that is comprehensive and well thought out and actually hits all of the points, established leadership as well as emerging leadership, so that, we don't just, there's enough space for the different sectors to be reflected, for the different geographies to be reflected, and for, all the communities to feel that they're being supported. Okay. Geographic, linguistic, religious, when I say by geographic, I mean like Northeast, Northwest, Central, Southeast, Southwest.
So you're trying to make sure everyone is actually included. It doesn't matter your religion or where you live.
Yeah, and it's important to know that food insecurity, although many people think, oh, it's in those buildings, those high-rise buildings in the food desert. You got food insecurity in Malvern. You got food insecurity in, residential settings where everybody owns their house. They're still in food insecure. And so we need to be able to reach and meet communities where they are to address this critical issue.
Okay, good. Thank you. Because I find education is key on letting people be aware of food insecurity. And I agree with what you said. Most people just think it's a marginalized area. And the funny thing about it is, like, we all know Black people and food. It's important. In the sense when we gather, there is food. You go to a Black person's house and it's highly impossible you will not be fed. So I really agree that everyone needs to know exactly what food is in our community and the shortcomings about food in our community. So thank you for that answer.
Yeah, no, definitely. The communal aspect of food is very important. And food is getting so much more expensive that how are people coping? I mean, so we actually have to have a strategy, not just for the food, but for the hyperinflation that's taking place. How do we roll with the hyperinflation so that people who are already stretched, whose incomes already are disproportionately out of whack, can actually feel secure about the threats, the constant pressure, because their children's mental wellness depends upon parent mental wellness. And if a parent can provide, their mental wellness can be holistically what it is. If that
Well
makes
said.
sense.
Yeah, thank you. And my next question, will the city support any research to assess likely potential outcomes over the 5 years outlined in the plan?
Yeah, I can take that one. So, assessment of impacts is definitely built into the delivery of the plan. So, there will definitely be a focus on outcomes each year and overall. And we're going to be looking to work through the leadership of the advisory circle and the committee at the city to explore various approaches to ensure that we are effectively evaluating this plan and developing and resourcing any research needed to ensure that we can do that most effectively.
Okay, thanks, Meseret. And I'm going to leave you on the hot seat for the next question. We know inflation is high. There are budget cuts everywhere. How will this affect the BFS plan?
Yeah, that's a great question and definitely a timely question. So of course, with resourcing, costing and resourcing was developed as part of the creation of this plan. And the plan is estimated with an outline budget of about 5 million over the 5 years. So of course, with the current climate, what we really want to do is ensure that we can not only keep that momentum going, but we also need community to continue to advocate for the need of this plan to ensure that those cuts don't happen and when it comes to this plan, and we can continue to resource and share that this plan is not only needed for 5 years, but that we want to continue to do this work beyond that. So that advocacy piece through community is going to be very important to ensure that we can continue to resource this plan, and that when community makes that noise, similarly to how Elder Aina-Nia pointed out, we were able to get this plan passed through council, but continuing to make that noise, continuing to share the importance of this is how we're going to maintain budgeting and resourcing this plan effectively for community.
Okay, and leading up to that, just a very quick question is, are there any consideration for advocacy involving organizations and corporations?
So should I answer? I just want to add 2 points. One is that the community has to be very clear. This is a priority. The public health crisis that was declared in June of 2020, that anti-Black racism is a public health crisis following the George Floyd moment, the murder of George Floyd. That public health crisis hasn't gone away. It's still with us. We still have a public health crisis in our community. Anti-Black racism is a public health crisis. And internally, we're making the equity argument. We're saying, in 1939, with depression, in the 2008, recession, due to the banks, what they did with currency and all that kind of stuff, the currency manipulation and all that stuff. It's always the same. Last hired, first fired. Let this be a precedent-setting moment when racial equity is not sacrificed because of some budget crisis that we're going through, which actually is through no fault of our own. Nor is it through no fault of any decision maker in this country. It's really the war in Ukraine, the price of oil is driving everything through the roof. And why should poor communities pay for things that they have nothing to do with? So we're making that argument clearly and consistently, but the community needs to also be clear and consistent that there's a public health crisis, anti-Black racism. It hasn't been solved. It hasn't been resolved. In fact, the more things change, the more they stay the same. More awareness, but still more health disparities. We're still dying disproportionately from everything. And in order for us to stop that, food insecurity is like a fundamental need that has to be addressed, along with housing and education and employment and everything else. But food is basic.
Well, that is so true, because without, you need everything else, but also food is important as well. It starts with food. Anyone else wanted to add anything on that question? Okay, moving on.
I was going to say it starts and ends with food. You know, when you die in the Caribbean, and I think in many parts of Africa too, we have these 9 nights. In Trinidad, they have 9 nights. The grieving mourning process take 9. It's the same in Haiti and the same in Brazil, 9 nights. And for 9 nights, people bring food to your house. The person who has experienced the loss doesn't have to do anything. They just have to receive their guests. And the guests bring food, they bring alcohol, they bring the guitar, they bring the music. And it's a party for 8 nights, and the night everybody start to ball. Right? But food is central. And it's like a wedding, and it's kind of it's a very costly undertaking. But people make the undertaking because it's critical for proper mourning, proper ancestral departure. Because like in Haiti, they say if you don't do that, the ancestor will make your life miserable. So you're gonna make sure you send them out well. And so doing this ceremony, this ritual, is actually recovery. It's the healing that you need. That so you don't need to go to a psychologist when you can't get over the grief. And during COVID, because of the hit that Black people took, many Black people were able to go through the culturally rooted processes for grieving and for doing it right. And so, and it's because it's so costly. So, we have to think about it. It's important for our health, our mental health, and our mental well-being, and our spiritual well-being as a people.
Thank you. Point well taken, and that is so true. And I just think that living in this country, it's a great country, but what tends to happen, especially with the Black population, we're just so divided, and also we lose a lot of our culture. So we're not able to celebrate the things that our parents, our ancestors did to actually survive. So we're just surviving based on what we see around us. So yeah, that's a very good point that you made. Thank you. And what successes and challenges were there in implementing the BFS plan over the first year? And how do you plan to pivot from the challenges in the years ahead?
So that's a great question. I'll definitely invite my colleagues to jump in as well. So we're in the process right now of engaging all of our partners in sort of assessing what some of those challenges look like, and we'll have a better sense in early spring when we complete our first report. And I think that was also shared in Dr. Khenti's presentation. So right now we're in the process of evaluating the year one. Having those conversations with partners. We've heard a lot about the impact of COVID-19. We've heard a lot about the season and how that's in the farming season and how it has impacted a lot of services and opportunities to actually provide community with emergency food response and also just with businesses as well. So as we're evaluating and getting a better sense through those partners and through the reporting process, we'll be sharing more about that and have a better sense of what that's looked like.
So basically, which makes sense with the pandemic and everything else that's going on, there are things that will have to, other added things will be piggybacking on things moving forward.
Yeah, so, exactly, Elder Cecile, and I think Dr. Akwatu has pointed out, over the presentation and through this Q&A as well, the impact of COVID has been not only exacerbating the stress on food systems, but particularly questions around and the concerns that we've had around food security in the Black community. So that's been demonstrated through, and we've seen that coming out in some of the reporting that we're doing with partners where, the need is more than what's been available in terms of resourcing, right? So the need to deliver and, requesting folks to apply for a particular program or service and being flooded with applications and not being able to then serve all of those folks. So being able to kind of go back to the earlier question, we want to continue to highlight that this is not only a need in our community, but it's a priority for us as a community. So as we take ownership of that and are able to communicate that out through our reporting, we're really hoping that we can also be able to share that with everyone else, so that we're all bringing this to the table as not only a critical plan, but a very important plan that we're all invested in, so that we can continue to assess what's working, what's not working, and how to come together to support that.
So in other words, we need a lot more community leadership.
You know it, but I don't think we have a challenge with community leadership. I think we need a lot more of that organization and mobilization, as there are so many amazing leaders. I'm sure, not only on this call, but mobilizing together to really activate on specific issues. So recognizing that this is a plan that we want all of our community to be invested in. If you aren't familiar with the plan, then get familiar with the plan. Reach out to us, connect with the BFSAC, reach out to folks like you as part of not only the working group, but also the partnership and accountability circle. When we mobilize together with all of those community leaders, we can be the most effective with the changes that we want to see.
True. Volume speaks loud when we do have the bodies. Anything else to add?
Yeah, the only thing
sorry, go ahead.
The only comment I would add is that it's a very difficult challenge to get race-based data so that we can validate both the benchmarks that we're working with, as well as the effectiveness of the different strategies that we're pursuing. We need good data, but we also need good storytelling. I don't think we are short on storytellers. We have got Aita here with us. We got a few people coming up. So we got good storytellers, but we need race-based data to be collected and to be collected well, because it's not just collecting race-based data, it's collecting it well, because many people are not comfortable collecting it, not comfortable asking the right questions. And so we have data gaps when we collect the data. So we need good data because we want to be evidence-driven and science-oriented in making sure this thing works and works well. Because we also want to be a standard and a model, not just for other cities, but for other diasporic communities facing the same challenge right across the Western Hemisphere. Very aware of that, very keen to help them address it through this, what we share, what we do and what we share. So that's where the storytelling comes in.
And one question before, because I know we're running behind time before I wrap up, is now, how can we go about that? Because we have always had challenges with getting race-based data.
Yeah, so let me say that the Black Scientist Task Force on Vaccine Equity has put out a brief to the Anti-Racism Directorate and plans to continue sharing that brief through the rest of the year. And really, the brief says we collected race-based data. If we didn't collect it, we wouldn't even know the extent to which COVID was a problem for this particular city and this particular community. I mean, I actually remind people that at the beginning of COVID, there were people saying Blacks don't get COVID. Just like at the beginning of monkeypox, they were saying Blacks don't get monkeypox. And it turns out that with every phenomena, every health issue, there is a racialized disparity because we're living a racialized existence, right? Yeah. But without race-based data, decision makers don't accept that reality and don't put in the money that's needed to address it well. And we need to put this behind us. We don't want race-based data for anything else but equity. If you're not going to use it, don't collect it. I mean, that's our attitude. And if you collect it, make sure you develop anti-racist plans to use it. So that's what we're doing. If we collect it, we want to use anti-racism across all of these dimensions of life that undermine food security and food sovereignty of Black communities to move this community forward in a way that hasn't happened since emancipation in 1834. I always like to remind people at emancipation, the former slave masters got reparations, but the former slaves got nothing. And because of that, the social determinants of life made life hell. And here we are in 2022, facing some of the same issues people faced in 1834. Do we want that 100 years from now? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm done. Thank you so much for letting me talk.
Oh, no. It's all good. All good. Wait, and now we have a couple of questions from the audience. That's coming true. Okay. How will the BFSWG and CABR collaborate efforts with community agencies to address food insecurity? How do we foster accessibility, affordability, and equitability on a large-term basis?
But I could say, who wants to answer that? I was going to say, do more of what we're doing. The way we're working is engaging different divisions of the city. It's not the Confronting Anti-Black Racism unit doing the city's work. It's the Confronting Anti-Black Racism pulling the different divisions of the city into supporting this effort, right? So we're doing it with the city, but we also need to be doing it with corporate, private and public sector agencies outside of the scope, but who have overlapping jurisdiction on these issues, right? And that's I think is this Confronting Anti-Black unit responsibility. Make sure that the city is wherever it's needed to be when it comes to food insecurity.
When you say the city, what do you mean by the city?
The various divisions within the city that address aspects such as unemployment, employment, housing, all of the things that's related to actually have a holistic approach to food sovereignty.
Okay, thank you.
It's not just about agriculture, it's not just about gardens, it's actually about housing. The green spaces have to be found for places where there's no green spaces, and you need to bring in the people who are responsible for that to talk to the people who are responsible for food.
Okay.
I would just add in terms of the point around collaboration. So embedded in not only the Black Food Sovereignty Plan, but also in the Toronto Action Plan to confront anti-Black racism is that we have an approach where we recognize that we cannot do this work, we cannot implement this plan without investing and ensuring that we are fostering transparent working relationships with our communities and ongoing partnership development. So we rely on that as part of our checks and balances. Is in order to be collaborative, we need to not only have these plans, but walk the walk and talk the talk with our community. So we utilize, like I mentioned before, the Black Food Sovereignty Advisory Circle will be one of those mechanisms for ensuring that we're developing partnerships and having those collaborative relationships with agencies to address food insecurity, recognizing that there are players who've been, in this field and doing this work long before there was a plan, and really have been the catalyst for this plan. So ensuring that we can continue to resource their efforts, but also expand on innovative approaches to support the new and emerging needs that are underway right now. So that's one aspect. And then, of course, we have our Partnership and Accountability Circle, which Elder Cecile, you are a member of. And so we turn to folks like you to ensure that we are addressing and creating strengthening our connections with community, because we are community, but we want to strengthen those connections within the city and within any strategies or plans that the city has, ensuring that there's that community voice and partnerships that are developed from that at the table.
Okay, thank you. And here is another question. How does CRS and support grassroots groups in the space to get assistance with getting that data collections?
We want to build capacity. We don't want to do it. We want to build community capacity to do it. And again, our role is to work with public health, economic development, and culture, parks, forestry, and recreation, whoever is involved, depending upon the location and the jurisdiction. But we want to also build community capacity to do it. Because community spaces are the safest spaces in any situation. And that's one of the things that was also clearly learned during the pandemic when it comes to vaccines. The safest spaces are community spaces. Whether it's a church, whether it's a community center like the Jamaica Canadian Association or what have you, that's where many people prefer to go. And same with the other issues.
Okay, Thank you, because I was about to follow up on that question and ask, what do you refer to when you say community capacity? But you did answer it. So you'll be working with churches, safe spaces,
churches, community organizations,
like community centers,
yes,
rec centers,
community health centers,
mm-hmm.
wherever Black people congregate or Black people are served, or Black people control the space.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. That was very good and very informative. And I believe our time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone, for the questions.
Thank you, Cecile Peterkin, for facilitating that Q&A. And thank you to all our panelists, Farmer Petrie. Thank you so much. Philemon George, Bernice Yanful, Arsima Barhana, Dr. Akwatu Khenti, Meseret, Asneke, Michelle Molubi. Want to thank you all representing CABR and BFSAC. Lord, them acronyms. We really got to find a kind of a cool kind of word or branding thing so we can get past some of them long acronyms. But the work is so powerful and so mighty. I guess we are stuck with all these very long acronyms. She is the godmother of dub poetry in this city, in the dub poetry movement in this country. I believe she is 2 times a Juno Award winner. Wow. She's also a person that reminds us this is not a one poem town. She's a professor of OCAD. She is a person who has been an incredible mentor, even for me in my lifetime. She is engaging a tireless advocate of social justice, none other than the award winner, internationally known Lillian Allen. Give it up, everyone, as we welcome Lillian Allen.
Thank you. And those of you out there, these are vibrational sounds that are coming through the ages. So feel free in your space to do it. And however your body moves, that's what is happening there. It's just these vibrations from the ancestors. I just want to thank you all for having me here and to just say that I used to be the youngest person in the room. And Anan and Aita can attest to that. And it's just wonderful to see that the struggle has continued, protracted, intentional, subversive, and with exacting work. So when we talk in abstractions, that doesn't mean anything. We want to get down to who did what, who think what, how we work as a collective. And that's what keeps me going. And I'm so happy to be around to see that, this is coming from a long line way before me. I took on the baton and the ancestors are smiling. Limbo dance, shackles on your feet, a washing chain, the slave ship, resist the life's defeat, made your songs with chains so strong, did your dance the restrictions, oh limbo dancer, oh you carry Africa so, limbo dancer, oh your spirit strong so, dance, you dance, a prisoner in a den. Dance, you dance, and you rise up again. Oh, limbo dancer, make your galang so. Oh, 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 oh. dancing on the slave ship, shackles on your feet, dance against defeat, bending low, bending like a willow, bending like a bow, bending down, your back against the ground. No tourist pay, see you make a show, ha 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 ha. They laugh when they try to bend their backs down low. Ha 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 ha. But limbo dancer, like a willow, like a bow, the prisoner in a den, you dance to free your Africa again. Ah ha 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 ha. Ah ah. Ah ah. Ah ah. And just feel free. Let it come through you. These are the kind of people we are. Many dimensions. You limbo in limbo, you limbo like me. You limbo in limbo, you limbo to be free. You limbo in limbo, you limbo like me. You limbo in limbo, you limbo to be free. Yeah. So I'm just pulling from a few poems here. This one is for the youth. We want to let them know that when we were their age, we were impatient. When we raged against a system of materialist greed, against governments, no matter which stripes, against banksterism, militarization, corrupt police, and against injustice everywhere. And when we had to, we stepped out of fashion. Tell that to the policymakers, y'all. And we rage against reason when it lacked compassion. Let the youth know we chomped down on Paula Freire, and Norm Chomsky, gobbled up bell hooks, Bessie Head, wrapped arms with Walter Rodney, Frantz Fanon. And we grooved on the music of Bob Dylan and Bob Marley, Rastafari Dread. And we want the young people to know we were farming too, raising consciousness for the revolution. And that is their legacy. And there is still work to do. So for the youth, and this one for the women, sometimes the women are hungry enough to eat air, feed their children morsels of hope wrapped in garlic rub, ignites the taste bud of revolution. Sometimes the women play at being God or goddesses, offering comfort and redemption to the suffering, water to the parched dreams, to set on fire different desires. Sometimes the women ache for love, for the simple touch of honesty and caring from governments. Sometimes a chill of society's indifference shivers the women, but they hold on to each other and this dream, that their children and all children will achieve freedoms and sufficiencies that eluded them. Oh, the women. They will keep filling their baskets with whatever weight or weightlessness they can muster and fill it again and again with hope until their last breath. For better must come, they say. Oh, better must come. And oh, they iron their best frocks for Saturday night, the women, and prayer garbs, the rituals, and how they adorn each other with a love as great as any God can ever offer. Sometimes the woman, worn down from neglect, steadied their steps, a bitter promise of betrayal, waiting, the weight of time slipping, inequality. Sometimes the women steadied their gaze and pushed past the impossible, despite the inequality on their eyelids, they push. Sometimes the women become the keeper of her dreams, our lineage of freedom. They tether us to a soul, their whispers in our vein, their courage guiding us. Sometimes these women become our ancestors, and we should know on the other side, we have Bakativ. We have Bakativ. we have someone, sometimes the women among us. Sure knew I'll do my last piece. Thank you for being here and carrying on the work. Again, it's just so heart-filling to see this, to see all the work that African Food Basket and the Black Food Independence Movement, Sovereignty Movement, has been doing for a while. Totalities, flashes, mysteries inscribe the question. If the question should be the answer, call my name. Artists, 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 activists, activists. The arc from birth to oblivion. Illuminate is to notice. Shh, 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 don't look away. Notice, notice, step up. Listen to what you are not listening for. What are you listening for? What are you listening for? Listen, listen, possibilities, an opening, the unheard, unity, voices of the ancestors, the unknowable, rumblings of the future, our strength in the present, the now. Uncode layers and layers of what it is to be postmodern before we become post-honorable, post-accountable, a guest, each one of us on this blue-green planet Earth. The why we are. The primordial beginning, the question, as if nothing is everything and everything, the pushing, pulsing, the ferocity of the creative spirit unleashed, a form of grace, as if all that is not visible exists, compassion, care, vision, unity, equality, exist in the skin, in our bones, in the backbone of all we know to be just. The earth, water, sight, watchfulness, a listening. If the question could be the listening, the earth, solitary, silent, corporeal eyes, walls are no longer impenetrable with art. The mind, once free, will live forever beyond walls. An idea seek to land, reach somebody, a twist of fate, an accident of geography, points, fingers, hands, eyes, tongue, lips, heart seeking a language. We must now put conscience into the new technology, give it a soul. The fragility of nothing, the fragility of everything, thoughts dashing like whirlwind, racing for reason, the fear of fear itself, fragile. The fragility, the fragility, the fragility of nothing, the fragility of everything. Our voices shall defy death, back from the nothingness, a world held, a twist of pandemic fate, marking troubling notions of race-ism, the brutish, unforgiving nature of hate. But artists and activists are not afraid to become family or foreigner in your midst, daring to find the question to the answer, the mother of each new beginning. New hope and love will gather up all manners of hurt and wounds and lull them to sleep. There is no reasoning to the mysterious birth of creation. The mysterious birth of creation? Why are we here? Why are we here? Incredible miracle of this mysterious birth. But what will replace you? What will be your history? Will you shatter this darkness into light, into lightness, into the pen, into the molding of material, the planting of seeds, paint and canvas, the spoken word? Equal rights and justice, this. Ask yourself, what's right with the world? Mystery, me, motion, moment, collaboration, community, a limitless space called imagination. Dream of becoming the rainbow, the lava beside the beach, trees in the forest, a shelter on Young Street, a history, a story, a syllable of moments, everything. an abundance of growing farms, of food, a voice, culture, awoke nations of creatives, the self as metaphor, the self is metaphor. You are what is important, but ask yourself, how? Ask yourself, how? Ah, 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 ah. As we journey, poetry and culture, as we journey. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lillian. Thank you for reminding us again. We're shifting the power. Thank you for planting these seeds of rhythm. Thank you for your words. Thank you for the honoring too of ancestors and of women. Thank you for bringing heart and soul to the conversation today. Ashe. And now I'm going to bring on the hardest working woman today, the woman on the tech, and that is none other than Celeste. Celeste, please come on. I hope you're clapping her wherever you are, because the hardest working person today is the person on the tech, and it's always a positive experience to work with Celeste on these occasions. So Celeste is going to come on and take us through some of the technical things going forward. Celeste?
Thank you so much, Elder Aita. Every time I hear you speak, it is just the most invigorating and enlightening experience. I learned so much from your eloquence and your wisdom. And thank you so much to CABR, Lily and Alan, for those incredible and inspiring presentations. So I'm just going to take everybody through the back end link. I'm just going to share my screen so that you're able to see what to do next. So we are going to be entering the break part of the session. And during the break, we welcome you to explore some of the other expos and booths on the side. So as you can see in the side buttons, we're in the main stage right now, but there's also networking tab and an expo tab. So in the networking tab, you can actually scroll through and you can meet people who are here from all different parts of Canada and all over the world. And you could send them a message, or you could click the 3 dots to schedule a meeting with them. And if you want to do speed networking, you can also click this button to do speed networking. We also have an expo booth on the left side where you can check out some of our amazing supporters. And then for the next 15 minutes will be the break where you could do that. And at 2:20, we're going to be going into the sessions rooms. The sessions rooms are on the side, and there are 7 sessions. You could explore everything from farming to culinary arts to nutrition to business. And there's going to be members of the advisory circle there and of CABR. So please choose a session that you are most interested in, that you would like to learn about. And then after 45 minutes, so at 3, we'll be going back to the post-group discussion. The post-group discussion is going to be a place where people can meet everybody else and discuss their insight with the entire group. So for now, everybody, we're going to go on break. We're going to do networking, and we'll send an announcement when it's time to go to the sessions. Thank you so much.